Hi everyone and welcome to Fan Commentary. Now this is a lot of big moments for PR. This is the first time we're returning to a previous Sentai season that we had skipped. And of course this is the first season that's going to be under Hasbro's control after their purchase of the Power Ranger franchise. And this will be the final time Saban will be a part of the series, maybe forever. And this, of course, is based off the Go Buster season. And there was a lot of elements in that season that are very different to past Sentai seasons, so PR had a lot of different things to do. I also love this scene because we get to see very references of past PR seasons, including the Juice Bar, Jason. There's a lot of things here. The cool thing about this season is that a lot of the Go Buster elements are different, and they had to incorporate them in various ways. We also got a new music composer for the season. Chip has also written this episode. I do like this scene because, we kind of have actually two snarky Red Rangers technically. So it's a different dynamic compared to other past Red Rangers where, they're cool, they're nice. Well, in this case, Devon, he's like he knows he's good and he wants to flaunt it. So he kind of asked for this. Then again, also Blaze, this is completely not acceptable reaction toward this. And it's also a good scene to introduce us to, some of the characters that will be used later to the season where we're not going to see them in this form that much. This also feels very similar to other past PR seasons, like Devon and his interaction with his father. They're very similar to how Wes and his father were, where he didn't want to do what his father was doing because he wanted to be his own self. He doesn't like, working for carpets, and he doesn't really want to have so much responsibility. He's like, I'm the mayor's son, but I'm not the mayor. I also love this. This is one of the things that I never liked about past PR seasons where there's a lot of elements from Sentai which will be brought over because they have to visually, and like in Zio where we had UAO and it was never explained. Here, they explain the GB because I was worried about it since Go Busters has that in their logo and it's plastered everywhere. They were not going to explain it, but they do it right at the beginning where it's called Grid Battle Force. I love how they combined all the elements from Go Busters with the whole power elements. It gives so many different types of stories that they can come with throughout the season with characters, city situations, and even major problems toward the Power Rangers universe. This also kind of makes you think, oh, this is must what they went through during Lightspeed Rescue because, the Grid Battle Force building is very similar to the Lightspeed organization. They created their own Power Rangers. Like, how did that happen? What did they do with this research? It makes sense that maybe the research was shared over different organization and companies. Maybe even Wes's father was in on this, and it all culminated into the Grid Battle Force in order to use the Morphing Grid as a power source. And of course, here we get introduced to our Bulk and Skull like characters. They're goofy and funny, and I think they're perfectly fine. Hopefully, they get used more often. They're also not part of the main cast. that security system is pretty crummy if it can actually use a photograph taken from a camera in order to check its ID. What is great about this pilot episode is that when you introduce your season, you have to go all out. You can't have it feel very cheap. And this first episode, the first impression shows they spent a lot of money on the sets. We're going through, outside exterior filming. We have this great new interior. It's corridors and it's very basic, but it's a lot more elaborate compared to past season. It's on par to what they did with SPD, which was another very expensive season with various aliens and, futuristic environments. And it was also a cool way to introduce our second character. She's not actually a part of the team. Well, she actually failed starting out at the rock bottom, and she's not giving up. She's going to continue on. Now, Nate, he's an interesting character. He's the one who's created everything. He's kind of like Dr. K. He's also kind of a mismatch of Cat and Boom from SPD. And he came up with the idea of using the morphing grid as a power source, which, it makes sense because it is the energy source around the planet and it seems to be virtually unlimited. Why not tap into that power to use it for various things? I love the mayor because he actually points out the major concerns of this. You're taking the Power Rangers power source directly, and you're basically a shooting target. Many people over the years have wanted to take their powers away from them to use them for themselves or just to get rid of them. I mean, it also uses the Rangers' technical side of the series where they don't really go into detail. So hopefully, this season will actually start using elements that were established in the beginning and expand on it. So we know the morphing grid has this energy source that could be converted to liquid. My thoughts on the opening, it's not a bad opening. It's just, it's sullied because, again, it's reusing the MMPR theme. Is it horrible? No, of course not. It's a very good, decent opening. I had just wished they didn't use any of the Go-Go Power Rangers. Now, Noam Keneal actually did write this opening, and I think he did a good and decent job. It's a little bit shorter than past season openings, which is perfectly fine. And I do love this new opening because it symbolizes like the morphing grid in the background as it pulls out. And it also has a little bit of the older classical elements where the 3D effect on the PR text logo is still there. If they can use the power of the morphing grid, they can always, of course, create their own versions of Power Rangers, which is cool because this is a kind of an artificial use of the morphing grid, so it makes sense that the suits and designs are slightly different than traditional PR suits. I like how they worked in that design difference into the season. Now, the majority of the elements are from Go Busters. The keys are actually new to PR because one of the things that the toy line from Go Busters was missing was a gimmick, so they decided to add this key element to it. It doesn't have any practical use on the Morpher, but for the show, but it's a cool little bonus thing that I don't mind. And I like how they set up how this teleporting works, because they do that in a lot of the Go Buster footage. This is how you're supposed to do your series. There's a lot of elements that you have to set them up in cool and interesting ways, and use it to your best of your abilities. I thought this was a really interesting idea because realistically, I guess the mayor should be able to see them, but I understand it. It also protects him because if he knows who they are, then he might be attacked. So in a way, the commander's looking out for his interest, but he also technically is a civilian that he knows about this, but he still doesn't have the clearance to see them. And I do like this twist that Ravi, Blaze, and Boxy were all supposed to be the original Rangers, and I like how they incorporated that into the story because Go Busters had a lot of different elements that you had to come up with, and they linked them together in a really cool way. Because one of the problems in Go Busters was that there was a lot of story elements, and then they ended them, they started another one. It was a start and stop problem. With Beast Morphers, they kind of combined the various elements. So it feels like it's much more streamlined. It gets to the point. This also feels very much like SPD, where Jack and Z get stuck in jail. This is a nice little scene because we need to have a bond with Boxy because she's not going to be in the season after this point. She will play one of the bad characters. So it's nice to see like what's going on with Ravi and Boxy. And it also shows Robbie's personality. Even though he knows that this is stupid, that they can't date because they're rangers, it's the whole fraternization things, it shows that he has his characters that I must uphold the rules at all costs, even if it affects me personally, because that's what the rules are. That's what we were picked for. I have to do it. He's very strong in that manner, which works in well for the Super Sentai footage too. That's the thing I really love about this season. A lot of the key elements of the characters from Go Busters are brought over in a very different way, but they can still use them without feeling like we're just directly copying them. The command room is actually pretty much the closest area that's very similar to the Go Busters set. It does have the rotating table, but it comes up with its own unique spin. Now, this might actually be a major plot problem later on because, this they're tapping into the morphing grid. The city is the first time they're going to test it on a city scale. And I was always thinking this might be a detriment to the Power Rangers power period because we don't know if the Ranger powers are actually infinite or can actually handle the planet on this huge scale, because even if it works as a city, they're going to tie it into the entire planet. I'm thinking they can easily come up with, like, as a season finale element where the Power Rangers powers will be drained forever, and that might be a cliffhanger or an issue they have to deal with later on. It also feels a little bit like Operation Overdrive, where they get their DNA altered. I would love to know how Zoe felt getting into this program because it's like you could see her determination. Now, I really love this idea and this how they introduced Enter's character in from the Go Busters. Now, I thought it was great to actually start right off from here because we have Enter's rip off Ranger powers as the main villain in our series because we didn't really need to have any of the beginning half where he was humanoid looking. And the same thing we have, of course, here with Boxy's character. This is Escape's character in Go Busters, and of course, again, just bringing her in right away. We don't need to, wait and wait. Because I think that was one of the major issues is that Go Busters, while it had really cool elements, it took too long to get places. I think if they had started like this, it would have played out much more better. What I also love about it is that now Boxy and Blaze, their bodies are now the main objective for them to actually protect and rescue, which is an element from Go Busters because in Go Busters, the Rangers joined the team in order to find out what happened to their parents, where did they go. That was the mystery. So instead of copying that element, they took the idea and converted it into this. We have people that are connected to each other, so they have something to fight for. I like Nate because even though he's the nerdy guy who created everything, he's not weak and he'll stand up to it for what's right and help the Rangers out in any way he can. He put a lot of trust in them in order to morph into new Rangers. Now, I particularly don't like the instant morph. It's a thing in Go Busters, that's what they wanted to do. But to me, that's a more of a Kamen Rider thing, and I'd rather have a sequence done. But, this kind of cool whirlwind effect is pretty interesting. It's very similar to the Megaforce teleporting effect. What also this does is that it helps explain certain elements in Go Busters later on. Now, Ravi is the one actually originally trained to be the Beast Morphers from the beginning, while Zoe and Devon are new. This fits in with the Go Busters footage where Blue is actually the older, the elder. He's more experienced. He's not rash and hyper, while Devon and Zoe fit in those roles. So whenever that footage gets used in Beast Morphers, it won't feel out of place. It's a really nice, simple way to introduce all the character traits from Go Busters and incorporate it into our season without any disconnect. Quicken your missed moment. Watch Ravi when he picks up his weapon. You'll see him knock down Red Key. And also another thing that we do know is that Blaze and Boxy retained the Avatar's memories because they knew Zoe was a janitor, basically. They probably know the secrets and how a lot of things work, and then plus they'll probably work with Evox, and this will just keep getting worse and more complicated as they go along. Hopefully they use teleporting a little bit more often in this season. This is a very beautiful shot. They took their time, they took their effort to do this, and it pays off because you want to give your big moment in your pilot. And of course, a lot of people will remember and might think of this is Zane from In Space. And again, show don't tell. They do have a connection to each other. They do love each other very much. And of course, now this is lost, and this is Ravi's personal reason of why staying on the team and trying to get her free. It also kind of feels a little bit like Jared from Jungle Fury because his body was taken over. This little bit of element is also kind of taken from the later Go Buster characters, where this does happen to one of them, and I do like it because taking elements from Super Sentai is perfectly fine. You can tweak it into things that we should come up with in something different. It makes the story more richer. It links up to the Sentai footage if needed, and they can use it for amount of different types of stories in the future. I liked it. This was actually Chiplin taking some criticisms from fans where mothers seems to be the ones that are always dead in the PR universe while fathers have been here. I think it's a really good opening. It's very strong. It didn't annoy me at all, and I hope this quality stays through the remainder 2 years. I am very happy that this came out like this. It explains a lot, but it doesn't over explain, and we have 3 new good PR characters, and I hope they do well.